The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy at Children's Health Defense. And today we are going to talk about the New York City mayor's race and medical freedom. This local election for mayor has taken on a national footprint. When Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic primary, Zohran being a Democratic socialist, it has taken social media across the nation by storm, as well as become a national news story. After I go through this, we're going to break down all the medical freedom positions of most important for these candidates. Then we're going to have Miriam Eckenfels is going to come on with our EMR team to talk about a recent victory that they have had and the work that they are doing. So stay for the whole show. We got a great one for you. Curtis Sliwa, Zohran Mamdani, and Andrew Cuomo are the three candidates who are running for mayor of New York City. Now, New York City and medical freedom, the number one medical freedom issue is fired unvaccinated workers have not been brought back to their jobs, have not been compensated, and there is no pathway for fired workers to come back to their jobs. We do have some who've gotten their jobs back, but they have lost their position, lost their seniority, lost tenure as teachers, all types of civil rights violations that continue to happen. So there's a major voting block of fired unvaccinated workers. So we're going to go through the three candidates and what their positions are. The only candidate who has come out in full-throated support saying he will reinstate and compensate fired unvaccinated workers is Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee for mayor. Curtis Sliwa is also the founder of the Guardian Angels from back in the 1980s, a citizens group that was working to keep the streets safe, especially when crime was skyrocketing through the roof in New York City. He's the only one who's come out in support of fired unvaccinated workers. And my friend, retired NYPD Lieutenant John McCarry, had Curtis Sliwa on his show, this show called The Finest Unfiltered, where he expressed that very clear support for fired unvaccinated workers. Let's show Curtis Sliwa in his own words.
So many others in sports and theater and the movie business didn't get the vaccine, friends of Eric Adams, and he gave them a pass. Eric Adams did not have to continue the de Blasio mandate of you get a vaccine or you're out. He did it, and he's made it personal ever since, fighting it, using corporation counsel to deprive these men and women. I remember when they were the heroes in the lockdown and the pandemic. Every night, 7 o'clock, hey, they're the best, not like the rest. And then we let them become zeros. I was on that bridge when all the men and women crossed over to City Hall. They remember me standing there, showing them, flying the American flag. I'm with you. When I was running in 2021, Eric Adams said, hey, you'll never come back. You'll never be rehired. So on day one, January 1st, 2026. And I know that there are quite a few of the men and women who don't want to come back. Some do. I'm going to invite them up on the stage. And I am going to say, not only are they entitled to come back if they want, but they're entitled to all back pay, all benefits. And this day is dedicated to these heroes. This is a shanda. This is una disgraziata. This is a stain on the soul of New York City. And today, we make it right. If they want to come back, they can have their jobs. If they choose not to, we totally understand why they would not want to work for the city of New York. But just recently, there was a press conference with Michael Mogul, the chairman of the UFT, and Eric Adams, and they announced they were hiring 3,000 new teachers. Not one of them or any of those teachers who lost their jobs as a result of the fact that they didn't take the vaccine, they couldn't for a number of reasons, they would have been the first persons that should have been recalled. This is personal with Eric Adams. Just like with Andrew Cuomo, everything is personal. They're bullies. They claim they're tough guys, right? There's nobody tougher in New York City than Curtis Lee. I think everybody would admit that. But I'm a man of compassion, consideration, and caring. The 3 C's are more important than being tough. You know, guys, being out there in the streets, anybody who has to keep telling you they're tough, they're not tough. They're weak, but they they bully those who can't defend themselves or who have been put out on a gangplank. No. That policy ends. And most importantly, we are going to lionize these individuals. We're going to dedicate inaugural day to them, and we will give them all the credit that they are due for being tortured. This was a form of torture. They lost their pensions, they lost their jobs, and then they weren't permitted to go get another job. They've lost their homes, they've lost all their equity. Many of them have become homeless, destitute, and their stories are not being told. I will be telling their stories every day and say, never again will this ever happen. And we need to honor these people. And that will be on the day when all eyes will be on that platform when I'm being sworn into office with my gorgeous wife, Nancy, who is my partner in all the animal rights issues. You know, we have another line, Protect the Animals line, because we believe in no-kill shelters and animal abusers need to be arrested, locked up. And then I'm going to say, but all these people back here, the backbone of this city, we gave them standing ovations during the lockdown and pandemic. They were heroes, and we turned them into zeros. No more, never again.
You know, I gotta admit.
So there you have it. Republican nominee Curtis Lee will rehire, reinstate, and compensate fired unvaccinated workers if he is elected mayor of New York City. Early voting has already started in New York City on Tuesday, November 4th, a week from today, actually. There will be election day in New York City. To be clear, Children's Health Defense does not support nor oppose any candidate for any office, but we do closely analyze all things medical freedom. Now, Zohran Mamdani shocked the world when everybody said Andrew Cuomo was going to win the Democratic primary in New York City. Usually when you win the Democratic primary, you win the mayorship in New York City. Not always, but the majority of the time. Zohran Mamdani had this upset. He is a Democratic socialist. Because of that, some people call him a communist, and this election has taken on a national scope. Zohran came on my friend, retired NYPD Lieutenant John McCarry's show called The Finest Unfiltered Podcast, and he was asked the same question too. He said, no, I will not rehire fired unvaccinated workers because if there is another health crisis, we need to be able to implement new vaccine mandates. Let's listen to Zohran in his own words. Let's play that clip.
2 questions. We have someone on the chat, Marlon Bethel, right? Like yourself, first-generation immigrant, NYPD police officer, rose to the rank of intelligence detective, terminated by the Eric Adams administration without due process, without a department trial, without ever being charged criminally or civilly for failure to take a vaccine. What are your thoughts on that? On your administration, would you hire Marlon Bethel back?
You know, I struggle on this in that I think it is, on the one hand, can absolutely understand the frustration of someone who has lost their job in a time when the city is tearing apart so much of the same policies that were made at the height of COVID and has arbitrarily decided which ones to keep and which ones to take. I mean, I'm right now in the state legislature pushing back against the governor's attempt to ban masks, which would sound ridiculous if I told you that a few years ago when it was illegal to not wear a mask. And to have all of this at the same time, I understand where that frustration comes from. On the other hand, I also do deeply feel the importance of following public health mandates in a pandemic emergency, especially when you're a public worker. So I think ultimately, if you ask me today, Would I be hiring Marlon back? I think I would fall on the side of no, because of the concerns around the necessity of upholding that public health mandate. And yet I also don't want to pretend that this is simple or straightforward, because there are so many contradictions. And I think that one of the contradictions that really stuck with me was how we had a different set of rules for workers than we did for celebrities. And I think what New Yorkers want is consistency. So that's where I am today, but I understand it's not simple, it's not straightforward.
But again, this is not really a vaccine issue, in my opinion. This is a civil rights issue. This is a worker rights issue. This is someone that worked for 2 years prior to this mandate during a pandemic, when most New Yorkers were in there, and was previously infected and had natural provable antibodies, which the CDC said were acceptable as to had the same level of protection that the vaccine did. This is more of a worker rights issue. So, sitting there and saying, oh, I care about homelessness, I care about worker rights, I care about the middle class, when we see a completely totalitarian dictate come down from a government that made absolutely no sense. Because like you just said it yourself, Kyrie Irving could play basketball, but Marlon Bethel couldn't go to work 2 years later. I mean, to me, it's kind of a hypocritical stance, in my opinion. How, because to me, this is not a vaccine issue at all. This is a civil rights, worker right issue. This set, honestly, New York City back, labor rights back, probably 100 years.
I mean, I hear you, and I understand the contradictions at the core of it. I think my concern comes from the likelihood of, that we could be in a new pandemic, and the necessity of following the public health guidance that we put forward in that pandemic. To the places where I absolutely hear you is the contradictions of the guidance that we've been given thus far, what we're continuing to uphold, what we're rolling back. But that's the central core, the tension that I have is, in that moment when the science has us believe that this is the most effective way to counter it, shouldn't we have public workers be the ones who are the first to showcase the necessity of taking that step?
So Zoran will not rehire fired unvaccinated workers as mayor of New York City, because in his words, there's a necessity to uphold that public health mandate. What does that mean? We might need to force shots on people again. Okay, there's Zoran's position. Now, Cuomo is a little trickier, but I can tell you Cuomo will not reinstate and compensate fired unvaccinated workers. We're going to go through Andrew Cuomo's history here, because he did not go on John McCarthy's podcast. He has not spoken publicly to this issue. But me and others worked our connections in New York City. And one of the top places I was able to get to was I was honored to have a meeting with attorney Frank Sedio. Frank Sedio is extremely powerful Democrat and attorney. Here's a tweet I put out. Thank you so much, Frank Sedio, for meeting with me and Progressive Act, that's Tremel Thompson, to discuss reinstate and compensate among other New York politics. Frank Sedio is one of Andrew Cuomo's biggest supporters and part of his legal strategy team. Frank is one of the two Franks, often called the Franks in Brooklyn, in Democrat. Frank Sedio and Frank Carone are close allies and business partners at Sedio and Carone PLLC in Canarsie, Brooklyn, sharing roots in local Democratic politics. Carone credits Sedio for launching his career, and they've collaborated on many issues involving Democratic Party matters and legal cases. Together, they embody Brooklyn's enduring Democratic political machine. That was just a quick Grok search on who Frank Sedio and Frank Carone is. Frank Sedio is firmly backing Andrew Cuomo in the election. Frank Carone was the chief of staff for the sitting mayor, Eric Adams, but he is now supporting Andrew Cuomo. And Eric Adams has endorsed Andrew Cuomo. These are powerful people. I spoke to Frank Sedio and pitched reinstate and compensate to him. He listened. He heard me. I greatly appreciate his time. We heard nothing back from Frank. We heard nothing back from Andrew Cuomo. And let's go back. First, let's go back before COVID. Before COVID, June 13th, 2019, Andrew Cuomo repealed the religious exemption to vaccination in one day, rushed the democratic process beyond all norms, and kicked out 26,000 children from public and private school for not getting vaccinated. Then we have Cuomo during the pandemic We got a lot to go through here. During the pandemic, Cuomo early on was speaking to vaccine hesitancy. Back in 2020, let's show that clip.
And we have to get in those communities, and we have to knock on those doors, and we have to convince people and put them in a car and drive them and get that vaccine in their arm. That is the mission.
That is the mission. Shortly after that, then President Joe Biden was issuing a federal vaccine mandate. At first, it was a vaccinate or test mandate, but Andrew Cuomo took it one step further and made it an exclusive vaccine mandate for medical workers in New York State. Let's show that clip.
President Biden is reported that he's going to announce soon that all federal employees must be vaccinated or get tested. New York State is doing the same. And we're working with our unions to implement this quickly and fairly. But we want to get it done by Labor Day. And I encourage all local governments to do the same. It's smart, it's fair, it's in everyone's interest. But we have to go further. And New York led the nation in going down the path that made the most sense, even though it is hard. And this has been the frustration for this country from the beginning. Politicians don't like to suggest actions that are not popular. A politician who suggests too many unpopular options is not a long-term politician. But there's a choice of doing the political thing or doing the right thing. And I've always chosen to do the right thing. And I believe, ultimately, that is even the best politics. But I think we have to go further here. I think we need dramatic action to get control of this situation. So in New York and our state hospitals, all patient-facing healthcare workers must get vaccinated. There will be no testing option for patient-facing healthcare workers.
So they're the first shoe drops for a real 100% vaccine mandate in New York. Andrew Cuomo was on record supporting vaccine mandates for all workers, saying that unions needed to get all of their employees vaccinated, saying that private employers should implement vaccine mandates. He didn't get to actually implement all of that stuff because he had to resign in disgrace. And we're going to talk about that in 1 second. But I want to show a clip of Andrew Cuomo just in 2024 with spinning reality on its head, saying that all of the COVID mandates that he issued as king dictates were illegal and didn't exist even. Let's show that.
I believe if government were to now say, we just made a finding that there's a new virus and everyone should do X, Y, and Z, the amount of compliance with X, Y, and Z would be much, much lower than it was at the beginning of COVID, because people do not trust the government, especially on this issue, the way they did at the beginning. And that would be a complicating factor, right? When you have people who just don't listen, because government had no capacity to enforce any of this. You must wear a mask. And people wore masks in New York. But if they said, I'm not wearing a mask, there was nothing I could do about it. You must close your private business. I won't. Well, there was nothing I could really do about it. It was really all voluntary, and it was extraordinary when you think about it, that society acted with that uniformity voluntarily, because I had no enforcement capacity. So you have a reduced trust in government.
He had no enforcement capacity. It was all voluntary. So I voluntarily left my job. I was fired. is what happened. I know businesses in Staten Island and all throughout New York that stayed open, that said no. You know what happened? The police came and shut them down. That's what happened. So Andrew Cuomo spinning reality on its head in 2024 because it's no longer popular to enforce draconian COVID mandates and force them on the public. So as I said, Andrew Cuomo had to resign in disgrace as the governor of New York for two reasons. One, the one that ultimately brought him down was credible sexual harassment scandals and allegations made against him. But the bigger one that was pushed under a little bit, but now has resurged, because apparently it's popular to talk about this now, are the 15,000 seniors that were killed essentially because of Andrew Cuomo's nursing home policies. New York Post, deadly lies, scathing AG report says nursing home COVID deaths massively underreported. The Attorney General in New York, Tish James, investigated this on Cuomo, put out a scathing report about it. She also investigated the sexual harassment allegations. And this ultimately forced him to resign because he was going to be impeached in Albany had he not resigned. Recently, Cuomo was called to congressional hearings about what happened during the nursing home debacle and scandal. Let's show a brief clip of that hearing.
My question was, did you ever speak with anyone, you, Governor Cuomo, did you ever speak with anyone at CMS or CDC about the directive beforehand? You, Governor Cuomo.
You asked that question, and I answered the question, and I said no.
Did you or not?
I said no. I answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Not even after, correct?
I said yes, and they never called me after. You would think if they had a problem with the directive, they would have called. If it was so outrageous,
you didn't even call to. You didn't even call to ensure that you were what you were declaring was accurate. Yes or no?
I don't know if the Department of Health.
Did you, Governor Cuomo? Right now, I'm talking to you, Governor Cuomo. Did you even attempt to ensure that what you were declaring was accurate? I'm asking you.
Yes,
I don't want to hear about anyone else.
Okay. Department of Health issued 400 advisories, several per day. I did not speak to CMS about 400 advisories.
Thank you. In fact, no one we interviewed said they consulted with them to ensure the applicable science was being followed.
So to be clear, what the directive was that seniors must be taken into nursing homes no matter if they had a COVID infection or not. Even actively infected seniors were housed with those who did not have the infection, and the illness just raged through the nursing home system, killing up to 15,000. And you hear Cuomo never reached out to CDC or CMS, the federal government, to ask if what he was doing was in line with what the federal agencies had put out there. And the Congressman Wenstrup there makes clear that nobody they interviewed reached out to the federal authorities. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil, right? At the debates, this became a heated topic because Cuomo decided to bring up COVID and Zohran Mamdani went after him. Let's show that clip.
If I can, I think I was invoked.
Yes.
In other words, what the Assemblyman said is he has no experience. And this is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Yes. May I? First, what you said was totally false, as you know.
Which part was false?
During COVID, everyone did whatever they could in this state. And there have been numerous investigations. where they've gone through it and they said we followed federal guidance. But yes, people died during COVID, and my heart breaks for everyone that died in this state and across this nation.
But just to be clear, just to fact check that, there is a criminal investigation reportedly underway at the DOJ about your testimony to Congress about your nursing home record.
Yeah, but that is a political issue with the Congress. They made a referral, which has gone absolutely nowhere. But there have been multiple investigations where the DOJ found that the nursing home investigation was politically motivated.
Okay, we're going to move on. We might have time to come back to it. I do need to move on to Mr.
May I just finish my rebuttal? But the Assemblyman still says he has no experience to do the job.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cuomo.
Okay, so Children's Health Defense does not support nor oppose any candidate for office. In that exchange, you see Andrew Cuomo says he was following federal guidance. In the clip before, we saw the congressman get him to admit he never even called CDC, and nobody in Cuomo's administration called CDC about the nursing home directive. There is a county executive named Steve McLaughlin in New York who defied Cuomo's order when it happened. And he said, I'm not doing that because seniors are going to die. He was right. He's a hero. He saved lives. Why didn't Andrew Cuomo listen to Steve McLaughlin at that time? Why didn't he call CDC? He claims he was following federal guidance, but he never got in touch with them. A group called Voices for Seniors has put out a press release. These are people who have had their parents, loved ones, grandparents die. Grieving families that attend New York City's mayor debate. We will not let Andrew Cuomo rewrite history. Let's show the full press release from them here. I'm going to read just the highlighted section. Andrew Cuomo may be trying to reinvent himself as a candidate for public office, but for the thousands of us who buried our parents because of his deadly nursing home order, there is no rebranding his legacy. Let's go to the rest of that and zoom into during the height. During the height of the pandemic, then Governor Cuomo issued the March 25th directive that forced COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, igniting one of the deadliest tragedies of the pandemics. Families across New York continue to demand transparency and justice for what they call a betrayal of trust at the highest level. Lou, let's pull that down. One of the scariest things here is Cuomo doesn't just say a pandemic might happen again. He insists it is going to happen again. Just a week or two ago, he was saying that on a podcast. Let's show that clip.
There will be another contagion. Because if you look back, this did not come out of the blue. There was Ebola, right? There's a whole string of viruses, and they keep getting more and more virulent. There will be another COVID, and it will be worse. And society will be more distrustful of what their government says, which is going to increase the spread of the virus. That will happen, and that's scary.
There will be another COVID. It will be worse. This is the guy who wants to run New York City as mayor right now. And the current mayor, Mayor Eric Adams, wants him to run New York City too because he has endorsed Andrew Cuomo. There you go. Mayor Eric Adams has endorsed Andrew Cuomo to be the next mayor. 2 peas in a pod right there, sideline at the Knicks game, because Eric Adams basically has the exact same COVID policies as Cuomo does. Today, Eric Adams is still fighting fired unvaccinated workers in court, stopping us from returning to our jobs. Here's a headline at Teachers for Choice. Kane versus Adams, unvaxxed NYC teachers petition SCOTUS against Eric Adams to get their jobs back. This lawsuit was called Kane versus de Blasio. It's now called Kane versus the City of New York. It is backed by Children's Health Defense. We have gone to the highest court in the nation to ask for our jobs back from the current mayor, Eric Adams, and he's endorsed Cuomo. Still fighting the unvaccinated. There was an open letter recently from some of my friends, from former Assemblyman Jamel Holly, retired firefighter Sophie Medina, and Vice President of Subways for Local 100, Tremel Thompson, asking Eric Adams to rehire fired unvaccinated workers. It's not going to happen. He's not going to do it. Just like Andrew Cuomo, if it's not clear after all of that, Andrew Cuomo does not support fired unvaccinated workers coming back to our jobs. Again, Children's Health Defense does not support nor oppose any candidate for office. But here is the number one medical freedom issue in New York City, bringing back fired unvaccinated workers. Curtis Lewa says he'll bring them back. Zohran Mamdani says he won't. Cuomo hasn't publicly addressed it, but clearly he will not be bringing back fired unvaccinated workers. I want to close on one thing. There was a recent poll. A lot of people have been calling for Curtis Lewa to drop out, that Cuomo is our only hope. Well, there was a recent poll not just a few days ago that shows in a head-to-head match, Cuomo versus Mamdani, Sliwa versus Mamdani, Sliwa is actually performing better than Cuomo is. And I show this because it just goes against the rhetoric we've been hearing that only Andrew Cuomo has a shot. However, this poll is a hypothetical. It is not what is really happening. What is really happening is we have 3 candidates running for New York City mayor. And I really want to expand that. We have candidates running all across the nation right now. New Jersey, there's a governor's race. Virginia, Pennsylvania, and you have your local races as well too that you need to be looking into. Please don't say it's not a presidential year. It's not an important year. It's not even the midterms for Congress. No, it is important. All politics is local. Your life is impacted by the local officials who are there. I just brought up to you a local official named Steve McLaughlin, a county executive who stopped the nursing home order from Cuomo because he knew better. That's a county executive. Who's your county executive? Who's your mayor? Who are your city council members? This is so important. Please, November 4th is nationally the big day that everybody goes out. Please know what's happening in your elections. Find out who supports medical freedom. Find out who supports your issues. Find out who's going to get behind you, and get out there and vote. And with that, that's the end of this segment. I really appreciate everybody being here, but stick around because we are now bringing on Miriam Eckenfels and our EMR wireless team. Let's bring that in.
Well, good morning, CHD, and welcome to another EMR and wireless segment. My name is Miriam Eckenfels, and I'm the director of CHD's EMR and wireless program. Today, we are going to first chat with our regular, Scott McCollough, about some recent developments in one of our cell tower cases and the new FCC rules we're in the process of fighting. After that, we'll hear from Kristin Phalen, who is fighting a cell tower battle in Nevada County, California, and she is in the process of intervening in a lawsuit between Verizon and her county. So very exciting stuff coming up. But first to you, Scott, welcome.
Good morning, CHD.
Good morning, Scott. So we have been representing Sitka for Safe Tech through the Stop 5G initiative. The Sitka community, and we had them on CHD before, is the community that was fighting a 120-foot tower literally in the middle of their residential community. And a couple of weeks ago, we scored a major win. The court sided with the community and us in denying the permit for the tower. So Scott, can you summarize what the judge ruled and why this is so important?
There were a lot of issues in that case, but the main issue was whether the local ordinance, which restricted cell tower heights in the residential area, to 35 feet had to give way to claimed federal preemption. The wireless company wanted to put in a 120-foot tower in a residential area right on top of a bunch of people. It was up a hill in a landslide zone, big safety issues. The wireless company said none of that can be applied to us. Federal law says you have to give us permission to put this in. We had a lot of arguments over whether federal law, in fact, obtained that result. The local jurisdiction denied the waiver request, and an administrative law judge ruled in our favor, affirmed the local decision, said that federal law did not override local law, and the borough ordinances still govern. Since the applicant didn't meet the criteria for waiver, the permit denial was affirmed. This is really an important victory for preservation of local control.
Right, that's awesome, and I have to make a compliment to all of the advocates in Sitka, because they really went above and beyond in mobilizing and advocating, and to you for the oral argument, which was excellent. When we talk about fighting cell tower, we always emphasize, and many of our viewers know this, that we need to maintain local control. Why is it so important? Why do we always stress that, Scott?
Like you just heard, politics is local. We have a structure here in the United States where there's 3 different levels of government. And the general theory is that most of the decisions should be made at the local level by those who are closest to the folks in the community. Local representatives know their community best. They know what they want. They understand the values, and they're in the best position to balance all of these issues. Yes, we need wireless connectivity, but there are important questions about where it should be, what conditions it should be there, and what it should look like. And the people in the best position to make that decision are your local authorities. Not the state authorities, certainly not the federal authorities in some brutalist building in Washington, D.C. So local control. Folks know their local borough council members and commissioners. They see them in the supermarket, and they can talk to them. They can convey what their thoughts are. This is where these decisions need to be made.
Right. And that's also where the communities have most of the influence and have most of the say, where, like you just said, where democracy really happens. And that stands in stark contrast to what the federal government and the FCC is currently trying to do, which is, propose new proposed rules that would essentially take away all local control. And so for the past couple of shows, we have spoken about these new proposed rules by the FCC and how they would essentially take away all power from local authorities and the local communities, the people, and allow telecom to plaster the county with cell towers, even if communities oppose them. So, Scott, because this is so important, remind us, what are these rules about, and what do they mean for communities, neighborhoods, schools, your homes, those who wish to protect their children and properties from cell tower?
Well, I think we have to look at what the FCC is doing as recognition that people are being successful in the local area. Their voices are being heard by their local representatives. When they oppose a cell tower, their local officials pay attention to what they say, and they are exercising the kind of judgment that they're supposed to make. So the industry isn't really happy. They want to just come in and put this stuff wherever they want, no matter what anybody thinks. And now they're facing opposition at the local jurisdictions and losing, quite frankly. So they've got their FCC, which is really more about protecting the wireless industry than protecting people, to try to essentially take the choice away from local communities. They want to restrict the amount of discretion that local jurisdictions have. They want to reduce local jurisdictions' ability to actually look at applications. They don't like some of the aesthetic conditions that local jurisdictions impose. Anything, in the FCC's view, anything that slows down, makes more expensive, or possibly requires the wireless company to do something other than what it wants to do is an inhibition of deployment. And therefore, in the FCC's view, we've got to take that away because actually the local folks are being successful in protecting their own interests.
Right. And that is just a crazy notion. So there are a couple of things that people can do to help us oppose this. So very briefly, in proposed rulemaking, a federal agency proposes a rule, and then there is a comment period that opens. That is usually 30 days after publishing the rules, which has not yet happened because of the government shutdown, but will happen soon. There's a comment period of 30 days where the public and experts and interested groups get to submit comments. And that comments are accepted now, but the official comment period will also open soon. So what we are currently doing, we are sort of like launching a two-punch advocacy strategy that we really need everyone to participate in. So we have launched, and many of our viewers, I'm sure, have already seen this and taken action, an action alert that addresses the FCC commissioners and that addresses Congress. Because let's not forget, Congress and the FCC commissioners could stop this madness today. So this action alert essentially urges Congress and the FCC commissioner to stop the proposed rulemaking, to abandon the nonsense, and to preserve local power for communities. Now, at the end of this action alert, it's very easy to click through. You fill out your address, your name, and it will send it to the right elected officials for you. At the end of this action alert, when you receive your thank you notice, there are instructions on how to submit comments to the FCC docket. You can follow those instructions and submit comments to the FCC docket, which is also hugely important. Now, we are going to, and stay tuned for, a second action alert that we will be sending out to our list soon, which essentially instructs people directly how to submit comments and suggests language that can be used for comment submission. And once that action alert goes out, if you are not yet subscribed to our lists at 704nomore.org, or if you are not yet subscribed to the Defender newsletter, it is a great reminder to do that so that you do not miss out on important action alerts where your participation is really needed. You can also follow us on social, obviously, at Stop 5G Near Me or at 704nomore, where we will also keep you posted. Now, Scott, aside from taking part in these alerts, what can people do to participate in the process and oppose these rules?
More than 4 years ago, the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit told the FCC that it needed to take a look at its guidelines setting exposure limits, human exposure limits. For 4 years now, the commission has refused to do that. In this very rulemaking, one of the footnotes says we have exclusive jurisdiction over exposure guidelines. Nobody else can touch it. What people need to tell the FCC is, well, I'm not so sure that's true, but assuming it is, why don't you drop this effort to take away local control and do what the court told you to do? Relook at your exposure guidelines and make sure that they are actually biologically correct. The whole premise, like the court held, is that there's no harm other than from when it burns your skin. And the court said, the evidence doesn't say that's true. There's probably more things that are going on here. Commission, you need to look at this again. Tell the commission to pay attention to what the court told it to do, not launching off trying to protect their friends in the industry by removing local control.
Right. Thank you, Scott. Great points. And, I want to now pivot to Kristin Phalen, who is fighting a cell tower, and her story, and also the story of Sitka, shall remind us why it is important to maintain these local rules, because there are communities out there that are fighting cell towers now, and quite successfully. So thank you, Scott, and welcome, Kristin. Kristin is a cell tower activist from Nevada County, California. She is fighting a proposed cell tower, and she lives right across the street from where Verizon posts the tower. Their community has been doing the right thing, fighting the tower, and the county has in fact denied the application back in August. And in true big telecom fashion, Verizon took them right to court and sued the county. Kristin is now working with her community to intervene in the lawsuit. So Kristin, welcome, and tell us a little bit about what led to Verizon suing Nevada County, and why you decided to step up and file this motion to intervene.
Well, good morning, Miriam. Thank you so much for having me on this morning. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all that you and everyone else are doing at Children's Health Defense. You all are amazing. A lot of us recently moved to these properties and purchased these properties. And in California, there's not disclosures that tell potential home buyers that there's contracts for cell towers. And this specific one had been in the works for 2 years. And about a year and a half after buying this property, the sites right around this proposed cell tower got notices from the county that a 13-story tower was going up. The plans were already submitted, and if we had an issue with it, we needed to talk to the planning department, which would be held at a hearing in 30 days. We went there, we gathered as a community, we voiced our concerns for having a cell tower at this location, and the planning department continued to process the permit and didn't hear us out. So we appealed that. We brought it before the Board of Supervisors. Unfortunately, they heard us and ended up denying Verizon's permit for the tower. And then a year went by, and we thought we had won that case, and we moved on with our lives. And then Verizon filed a lawsuit in federal court against our county. And when that happened, the county called me and said, we agree that's not a place for a cell tower, but we're not going to fight this. But if you want to file a motion to intervene, then you can spearhead this. So that's where we are now. And the hardest thing about this specific site is this tower is 100 feet from 12 people from their front doors. And 4 of those people are 4 little kids. And we've had loan officers and agents come visit our homes and do site tours. And they've said that if the tower goes up in that location, those people may not be able to sell their homes and move. And that means those little kids are stuck there. So there's a team of people working together to fight this specific tower. We have different reasons, but for me personally, it's for these kids. There's children who I know will be hurt by this, and they don't have a chance of potentially even moving or getting away from it if we don't come together as a community to say, not here. We're not saying no to a cell tower in this area, but not on our doorsteps.
Right, and I commend you, Kristin, for the amazing effort that you're putting up. It's a hugely important fight, and I know how emotional and how sort of like, because you're taking on this huge enemy, right? Like in this powerful industry. And also, to hear from your county that they don't want to defend this, it's really heartbreaking. So I'm very impressed by the strength of you and your community to take this on to protect these children. It's so important. I think your case is really interesting because it really showcases how telecom operates, right, when they don't like a local decision. So how do you think, or how do you feel that what your case reveals about how telecom companies use the court system to intimidate communities, and how are you and the local residents responding?
Well, that's probably the most frustrating part about all of this, is that it is like fighting Goliath. that they have so much power and money, and then it was incredibly disheartening when our county wouldn't back the decision that they voted to support. So I feel like there is corruption at a lot of different levels, which is extra frustrating because it's not that we don't have an amazing case. We have some of the top attorneys in the country helping us with this, and they think that we have a solid shot at winning in federal court. But I heard from the county that because there might be some people internally who don't want the tower there, even though we the people won on a county level, that they're not going to fight it because there could be a conflict of interest was what I heard. So just the depths of how deep some of this goes is really frustrating when people we elect are supposed to be for the people and protecting us. And I'm starting to see that maybe they're not.
Right. And there's also, I mean, we have to be realistic about that. Telecom lobbies, they lobby on the local level, they lobby on the state level, and they lobby on the federal level. And it's a huge influence that they exert. And I think it's really important that communities push back and exert pressure on their elected official, right? It's the county's job to defend the residents and not big telecom. And I think, you know, we spoke about the new proposed rules before. The thing that you mentioned early when you told your story, that, you know, you got noticed that this is happening, right? Like, and so you sprung into action. The new proposed rules want to take away the notice requirement so that communities don't even realize when a cell tower goes up, right? Like, because it's annoying to industry and to the FCC when communities stand up and delay the process and make them jump through hoops to get these permits, when this is really where the sausage is made.
Right. Oh, it's completely disheartening and sickening to think that they would take away even the little bit of right that we have to fight this. I mean, fighting this for the past year and a half has been a full-time job. It's been exhausting and like running the gauntlet backwards and blindfolded. Everything is set up against people speaking up, and they pull every dirty trick, and they've just, the amount of lying and deception I've seen with this has been gut-wrenching. And so I think it's incredibly important we continue to speak up and fight this, because if parents knew the reality of what they're installing and what this has the potential to do to our children, we wouldn't be allowing these things to go up everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we're so grateful that you're taking on this fight. We are actually, through the Stop 5G initiative, working with a community in Nevada County as well on strengthening and revising your wireless ordinance, because oftentimes what happens is that if wireless ordinances are not protective enough, and if industry has its way in, you know, further watering down the local process for as long as we have it, then, you know, these cases, when they do go to court, they become that much weaker. So your county is really an example, or the activists in your county is really an example of how communities have to mobilize and organize and push back in revising their local wireless ordinances and keeping an eye out for tower applications and then fighting them with all they got. Now, these fights are exhausting, they're long, and they're very expensive, and you need a lot of support. So tell us, Kristin, what can CHD supporters do to help you, your community, your organization, and how we can all get together to push back against industry?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Really, the biggest thing we need is help with funding. We've had to hire 2 law firms to help us with this, because the lead attorney's in New York, and so in federal court he needs California representation, and so we're getting bills on a monthly basis from 2 different firms to help us battle Verizon in federal court. And we can't do this in our own strength. We're just everyday people. There's widows, there's veterans, there's retirees, there's single parents, and we've put up a really good fight so far, but we do need help. And so if you can visit our website, check out our fundraiser, any amount helps. It all goes to paying and funding the legal team. And that's really where we are, is just getting the word out, helping educate people on the reality of this equipment, that it's not safe for children, and for funding, because we're up against Verizon, and that's not an easy task.
Right. Absolutely go check out their website and do support them if you can. Thank you very much, Kristin, for coming on today and telling your story. It was a pleasure to meet you, and we're very grateful and supportive of the effort that you're putting forth.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate all your support and help. Thank you, Miriam.
And I just want to remind our viewers that everybody should by now have visited the stop5g.org website and looked through the manual of how to fight a proposed cell tower. And step one is always to look find out if a cell tower is proposed near you. There are tips on how you can find out if a cell tower is proposed, and if so, how to effectively oppose them, how to get in touch with us, how to hire lawyers or our team to represent you and support you. So we really encourage everyone to go to stop5g.org and follow us on social at Stop5G Near Me. So that is it from me. Thank you very much for joining us today. And now stay tuned for another episode of The People Study.
We are live right now. So if you can tell us your name, that would be great.
My name is Kim. I call myself Kim Freedom, Free Seattle Kim, one of those.
And we've called it The Difficulties of Being an Activist in Seattle. So off you go.
Okay. Well, I have been voiceless for so long that I wrote this. I hope it doesn't sound canned. And I must talk fast as I have a lot to say. I'll briefly talk of my maybe vax injury, but I'm not actually positive that's true. But I'm mostly here about free speech and censorship and how voiceless it is to be a loud, proud freedom activist alone, practically in Seattle, and poor on top of it. I was hurt by the DPT as a kid. It was delivered via a gun that left a mark like a plug outlet in my swollen arm for ages. It had the sound like, you know, it was really intense. It hurt so bad. I blew up like a balloon and recall being woken by my mother, throwing my blankets off me. She said, "Your fever's too high," and grabbed me in my sweat-covered nightie, dropping me in a tub of ice and freezing water. But what I remember most is that I did not feel cold. It was strange. I was in this ice water and I didn't feel cold. That's my main memory. But I had 3 other tetanus shots in my life, not having any idea until you guys told me that it was the DTaP. I didn't know that. I thought that the tetanus shot, was to cure tetanus. I mean, what's the point of a vaccine if you already have tetanus, you know? I just assumed I was getting a shot to cure tetanus. So I wish I could go back and not get those, but sorry. The third time I got this shot was shortly before my whole life turned upside down. And as I had gone in to get stitches for a busted up elbow split when I got the shot, I also developed focal dystonia in my arm, making it hard to write. I have to do everything by hand, which is why I write everything, as I have no internet, no tech. Part of why I'm voiceless. They stole safe, non-digital ID identified web use from the poor in Seattle, and that is too long a story to tell here. But yeah, pretty much most of the poor here have no internet. And I won't use the library either, where other poor go for that reason, and the bevy of security who treat me as a terrorist for wearing signs and trying to start freedom groups there. Actually, even the dystonia has been diagnosed as neurological, so may also be from the tetanus shot, but I can't say for sure. The breakdown I had, which was terrifying, left me disabled, unable to work, and in the system. I live on federal money, live in public housing, have Medicaid and Medicare, and I really have no means to get out of that situation, which is why I'm stuck in Seattle, why I haven't left. I prefer to be private, so hated in this city and kind of everywhere these days, but private about my issues. But I saw a movie on BitChute about a young guy who got a tetanus shot that ruined his life, and later the movie If I Had Known the Risks on CHD, both of which I totally resonate with. I feel like I had such a similar experience. I mean, all the things they describe, it happened to me. But I'm truly not positive that shot is what made me change, so I just have to say that. But I need to speak of lack of voice and the extreme loneliness of being a freedom activist in Seattle. I've had all the motivation, but zero means. I started before COVID fighting for this cause without knowing it by trying to stop cell antennas from being put on my public housing, which was the first place they put them in Seattle. They put them on public housing, which is illegal. You can't give public property to private companies, and they sold our roofs to cell companies. It's insane. But I tried fighting that. It was a long, hard struggle and got nowhere. Then I got into the smart meter fight because I happened to run into a guy who was talking about it and ended up crying on the mic at a town hall event seconds before those appeared everywhere overnight, like literally in a blink. They were just everywhere. And all of that was really to my own detriment. Now I know the behemoth I was fighting. I had the internet then, and I learned first from Pam Popper, then from you guys and the Highwire and other places all about the pandemic. It changed me from being an about as far left as you can get progressive lifelong Democrat voter to being a political refugee like most in this movement, not knowing where to be. I found March for Freedom Washington and Informed Choice, which seemed only to work outside Seattle, sadly, or kind of on the outskirts where I can't really get. I went to every march the former did here. I just can't get to outside stuff where the groups mostly do things. And I feel strongly that the Washington movement should have concentrated its work here where the population is. I also feel we should mostly work off the web on the streets. To be honest, I have felt rather cast out by the movement here in Washington, but not today. It's wonderful. But there is really no movement in Seattle, and I feel often it's just me screaming in the dark. That's kind of what it's been for 3 years for me. The last march here had a miraculous for Seattle, 300 people, so I was kind of shocked when they stopped. That was years ago, but to me, it felt like we were just on the verge of a giant uprising, like the 10,000 they gathered in NYC. That movement gets that you have to have the city involved. You need to have everyone of every color, gender, religion, political persuasion to do something real, to really change things. And for that matter, everyone of every capability, mental or otherwise. Anyway, I found myself quite alone, so I began soapboxing on corners, reading from the Defender and Movement books and my own speeches, putting up yours and the White Roses stickers and mini posters and handing out thousands upon thousands of flyers. I just wanted to show my tiny little flyers that I do. These are all like old flyers I've done. And they're very hard and expensive for me to produce. But I tried to start 3 groups as well in that time, including Free Seattle and Take Back the Countryside, which was about trying to somehow get enough people to buy land that could serve as an underground railroad stop to save poor folks like me, who I feel will soon need to escape Seattle. Without a freedom movement here, we have no safety. It is crazy what's going on here. But no one ever came to my groups. That's the luck I've had. But I also came to religion through the freedom movement, because you guys always say, like, God wins, don't worry about it and stuff. And it really, like, brought me to really wanting to figure it out. And I started going to all these churches and trying to connect. And I found church after church to be corrupt and self-sabotaging on the inside here, seemingly trying to affect their own destruction. And bunches of churches have been destroyed here. That's a whole story too, but I also fought this. I really tried to write letters to the church councils. I did all this stuff. And I only ended up feeling banished myself, just as I have been banished from over 20 places in Seattle for not complying. I have been alone through most of this as a loud, and I mean aloud, when I soapbox, proud freedom activist. I have felt totally alone against frequently a barrage of hate or dismissal. Despite my very real voice, which I never quiet, wearing signs all day, every day, with zero backup and little more sympathy, and without any means to use the web, I feel endangered and silenced. I've received myriad death threats. A man in a truck, seeing my sign, "Too late," at a crosswalk, said if I'd seen you, I'd have run you down. A nurse in scrubs told me she hoped I'd be hospitalized because they kill anti-vaxxers there. She really said that to me. I have been punched in the neck, for which the police profiled me and gave zero help. The guy, if it's him, I got no good look at him and have never been allowed to see the video evidence despite that I begged. Still stalks me, I'm pretty sure it's him. I've been bullied nearly always by Seattle's thousands of black shirts, Antifa, etc., and private security guards. There are thousands of them, and they have mostly not been great to me. Not always, but mostly not been great. The worst experience I'll relay, then stop. I was at the Capitol Hill Farmers Market where they set up a COVID tent, which Victoria actually filmed in one of the marches that I attended, which was really cool. Picking on them because they were trying to get kids to do this game, like to romance them. It was disgusting. Anyway, just beginning to soapbox there when a woman with a huge dog began screaming insanity at me inches from my nose. Her vocal level, loud as mine, and like I said, I know how to project, pinched my ears. She hurled every cuss word and insult, including, of course, racist and homophobe and such she could come up with, shoving me and poking me at one point. Her poor dog fell against me, and I was afraid that it was her kicking me, so I screamed. I didn't realize it was her dog. But anyway, my own speech dwindled to yelling yours and the high wire's addresses. She told me to get out. I wasn't allowed on a public sidewalk. Said she'd call the police. The single response I gave her was, "Please do. I am being harassed." When they came, they refused to get involved and did nothing, save to tell me it would be better for all if you just left, talking only to me, didn't say anything to her. Then they drove off and she kept yelling. A crowd had gathered and she asked them, this is after genuinely about an hour, me just continuing to screech addresses from a broken throat, her never moving an inch from my nose as she yelled. She asked the crowd, show if you want her to leave, and every one of them busted out clapping, laughing, hurling stuff like, get out of here, B-word, no one wants you here. I unfortunately lost it then. I broke down crying and walked away yelling, first they came for the Jews. They will come for you. I beg you, you guys, help me have a connection to the greater movement and a voice. I need help. Can someone come film me walking around Seattle showing the devastation? I don't know if you can do that, but I can't do those things myself because I just have no internet means, nothing. Can you help me publicize my new freedom group? I don't know about that because I know it is it's oriented toward politics, and I don't know if I can say that, but can I say the time right now and just know it's not CHD advocating this, or is that okay?
We're not. It's not that Children's Health Defence are supporting it or not supporting it, but you can say it's your story.
I can say it. Okay. Okay, my new group is Free Seattle. It's to meet every Saturday at 2 p.m. at Miller Park Fountain, 19th and Thomas, Capitol Hill. Or can someone just get me out of here, out of this crazy city? I mean, I hope I can start a group. This is the third time I've tried, but if no one shows up again, I'm at a loss. But I need to get out of here. This is a closing dictatorship. King County, Washington is. I can show you that if I was ever able to just like walk around and show people what's going on here. But I've been profiled hundreds of times, even by a 9-year-old boy circling me with this camera. You know, somebody else was like, I got you, now you're in trouble.
Okay, so what is on your sign that's causing all these problems?
I used to, well, one of my sign out there says, it says, I'd rather catch the flu than be gagged and poisoned. It shows like an image of a hypodermic with a skull and crossbones coming out of it, you know, that kind of thing. Like, I've done stuff like that all throughout. At one point I had a recall Inslee sign, which is our governor, stuff like that. I've done many things, but yeah. Anyway, I just know tomorrow I'll be alone here again, and I just want to thank you so much for being nearly the first ever that's really given me a true voice to a real audience of people, and thank you. Thank you
Thank you for telling your story. It's actually sad. But
It's been hard.
The people are good. There are good people out there. Do not lose hope.
I know, you guys are.
And let's see if they come forward. Thank you for telling your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
History doesn't wait. This is our moment to rise, unite, and reclaim our children's health.
Join us here in Austin, Texas this November at the Children's Health Defense Conference.
In the wake of unprecedented medical overreach and censorship, the world is waking up, and people like you are leading the way.
We're at a turning point in history. With the pandemic behind us, our fight for freedom and health has reached the global stage.
This is our moment of truth, and we're ready to seize it together.
And Children's Health Defense has been at the forefront of this charge. Our 2025 conference brings together the leaders, visionaries, and warriors who made it happen.
Meet the parents whose lives were forever changed, and hear from doctors who risked everything to speak out. Stand with those who refused to be silenced.
You are going to hear from world-renowned speakers, doctors, and frontline leaders driving the medical freedom movement.
Discover real-world solutions grounded in science, integrity, and human rights.
Join the discussion to talk about vaccines, informed consent, parental rights, and so much more.
And you'll of course hear from your favorite CHD personalities, sharing the latest on CHD's research, litigation, and outreach.
And while you're there, soak up the energy, culture, and music of beautiful Austin, Texas.
Whether you're a parent, a practitioner, or a medical freedom advocate, this is your call to action to protect what matters most.
Be part of the movement that is rewriting the story for generations to come.
So please join us.
Join us.
Join us. Let's make history together in Austin.